You're listening to Australia's most informative technology show.
Tech Talk Radio.
James Gardner joins us now. You finally got here, James.
Yes, I did.
He's been here all evening. You've heard his voice. Hang on, Dr. Ron, can you clap for the camera for a sync point for the audio?
I can, as long
We've
as
got a camera here. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Done. James joins us from Digital.
That's right. My company's Digital, and my company works in doing technology and software and IP for the cinema industry.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd come in again today because there's been a lot of very interesting developments in the technology for cinema. I think it's one of the most exciting times in cinema for a very long time.
I have to agree with you on that. There's some good stuff out there at the moment.
It's amazing stuff.
3D's been and gone now, so what have we got?
Yeah, that's just absolutely quite true. What we've got now is, just straight away, first off, it's quite astounding how much passion goes into the toys people use to shoot movies.
Absolutely.
It's quite amazing when that is only a very, very, very small part of making a movie, like getting people to work together and getting, a crew of 50 or people to shoot a film, etc. Some people would think that's probably a more important thing, but people seem to concentrate on the cameras, etc. And recently, 2 new cameras were released. You mentioned one last week, which was the C300.
Yeah, this is the Canon device, which comes in 2 flavours. One with the PL mounts and one with the XF mounts, which is traditional, just standard Canon lenses that fits on the front of them.
Which one's yummier?
Depends on which glass you own. It's really they do that because there's a lot of old glass out there, and that's actually more of an investment than buying the actual recording device in the long run.
Yeah.
But in terms of the cameras, the exciting part of it is that these cameras are bringing the cost of making film or the quality on the screen down for that part of the whole it's quite a complicated thing to do, and it's bringing that part down to a very cost-effective amount. Now, the C300 from Canon was very big affair because it's based on, everyone knows the 5D Mark II, which everyone's going on about.
These are digital SLR cameras, which have been out on the market for some time, the 5D in particular.
But they can shoot video, not just
There's one here now. There's a 7D, which does the same. Well, a lot of them do these days, but some better than others. And
just to give you an example of that, for example, there's quite a number of the highbrow series, like, for example, House. House has been predominantly shot on a 5D today. And lots of other, instead of using these hundreds of thousands of dollar cameras, we're using $5,000 cameras instead. Now, the 5D is not completely suited for that in terms of form factor, so the Canon brought out the C300, which is much more suited to it. And it's a $15,000, so it's a big price jump from the 5D, but it's more suited for shooting that sort of thing, because the way it takes the image and squeezes it down. It doesn't do line skipping or these other techniques which cause anti-aliasing on edges and sharpness issues, etc., which if you really want to get technical in the 5D. And this camera avoids that sort of scenario. It uses a more common codec, which is a 422 MPEG 250 megabit and all this sort of high-end jargon, etc. It also...
How does the price compare, James, with what was used previously?
Well, it's fantastic price. The only real big issue here is that at the same day, a few hours later after they announced that, everyone's heard of Red Cinema or the Red camera.
Well, some people haven't, but Red's another competitor in that same market. Red cameras have been around for a while. A lot of feature films get shot on them.
Yes.
Yep.
And anyway, the Red camera, or they brought out this new camera called the Epic, which is a 5K camera Bayer filter, and it's doing very well. The Hobbit's been shot on it, Spider-Man 4 or the new Spider-Man, and lots of big features you've seen lately have been shot on this camera, and the workflow is there. It's mature and it's been giving us fantastic results. Well, Red, just after Canon released their camera, released what's called the Scarlet. Now, the Scarlet was supposed to be this very inexpensive camera, but I think they ran out of time or whatever. They couldn't really get it right. So what
Market pressures, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. And what they ended up doing is basically selling the Scarlet chip nobbled down in the Scarlet for $10,000.
Well, even still, a $10,000 camera for indie developers and stuff, like Lena speaks a lot of indie game developers, and obviously we know how financially challenged indie game developers are. Well, let me tell you, it's the same applies for indie film developers as well. And this is where these optional cameras come in, because traditionally everyone uses the Arris and all the big, the Panavision cameras and stuff like that, which is traditionally, the very expensive productions. But we've got this next level of cameras coming down, which started with the DSLRs, the digital single lens reflex cameras, cameras, and Canon have really got that market by the short and curlies, because we've had the 1D out for a while, and now more commonly it's the 5D and the 7Ds, which the bodies of those cameras you pick up for sub $2,000, I think, these days. And then it all comes down to the quality of the lenses, the glass that you put on them. And this is where I think Canon have really competed with Sony's F3, which we spoke about probably 6 months back when that came out. And you can actually use the glass or your lens from your digital SLR camera on one of these now motion picture cameras,
That's
the
right,
C300.
Yes.
And I think that's a great resource, because a lot of cinematographers are starting to use these devices. We have one here in the studio this evening, and it's just the next extension. It's going the next level. How do they go up on cinema? Have you seen them transcoded and...
To tell you the truth, in my opinion, anything shooting like that, like a red or etc., going through a DI, going to screen, looks better than film has in a long time.
Wow, that's a big call.
In my opinion, it does. Film has a lot of issues in the way you use it and what you want to do with it. And digital can basically imitate everything that film does in today's the advances of the red, etc. But the problem is that you actually have to know how to use them correctly to obtain what you want onto the screen. And the big thing about film was far more forgiving, and probably still is to digital to a degree. So it's more, if you know what you're doing with digital, usually you can take it further than film can, and even in today with the red and the other digital cameras out there. But you just need to know what you're doing. It's like the old days of when you went from analog recording in audio to digital recording in audio. In the old days, you used to record them quite hot and it would be all fine, etc. In the digital days, you actually need to make sure you never get anywhere near the hot, or you never want to peak at all, because it's just the end of it.
Digital stuff gets distorted, and that's the end of it.
That's right. And it's very similar in digital video. You want to shoot it so it's very flat, it's a little bit dark, and when you actually see it raw on a screen on the set, it looks terrible. It doesn't look like anything you really want. Because it's been shot in a way that, when you go through post, you can pull out the data that you want is there.
Post-production, yes.
But in post is where you decide how you're going to pull out that data and make the picture look like you want to on screen.
Well, that's very important, because a lot of today's modern editing facilities have what we call colour correction in them.
That's right.
And it's those colour correcting software packages, which are part of the main editing packages traditionally, where you can pull it all apart and make things more colourful or do all those special effects. And it's like being able to, the raw footage, that when you take a snap with these cameras, you get a raw file, which you can then put into your photographic software and re-expose it again.
That's right.
As if you were there taking the photo again. You can do those the same sort of things in post.
Do that with video, can you, as well?
Well, you can.
Yes. Now, I want to get into when I want to talk about the C300 and the red, I want to jump into quite a technical reason about what the difference is and why they're important to us as cinema owners. Now, the big thing about what people wanted film for was the latitude, right? Now, the latitude is basically how much colour information you store when you record the image. Now, film, being an analog process, can store its next to infinity, because it's an analog based process. But we can only really record everything go through a DI, and it eventually go through some sort of filter.
What's a DI? Just for those not using
a DI means that you get the recorded medium and you put it into some sort of digital format through different digital processing. Through the years, it's improved with the amount of colour information you can record. Now, let's have a quick lesson in colour information. Like, if you go to a typical image that you see on your screen, like a JPEG image on a website, that's usually an 8-bit RGB colour, right? Now, 8-bit RGB colour means there's 256 colours between, like, black and white. And we can actually see that. If we really look hard, we can see the slight differences in the banding between the colours.
Normally in a sky, when you get those beautiful blue skies where you go from a dark blue to a light blue, that's normally where I sort of see.
And typical, if you get it recorded on a typical video recorder and they record the sky, a Handycam, which is recording in typical 8-bit YUV colour, you will actually be able to see banding across the sky, right?
Yep.
Now,
you never got that in analog, did you?
No, not really. But there's other reasons why I didn't get it called temporal.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, okay.
So that's where you have the contrast. Like, there's almost no contrast at all. It's a very, very gradual change of colour, from one side of the picture to the other.
That's right. So if we say typical,
I'm speaking in layman's terms because I'm a layman when it comes to this stuff.
Ask questions.
Typical. If we look at it back in 8-bit, right? That's RGB, what we see on most computer screens. Mm-hmm. If we're going into any post facility and stuff like that, we're actually trying to do this properly, so we've got all the information there. It usually jumps up to at least 10-bit and possibly more. Right.
So the more bits, the better.
the more bits the better, because every time you add a bit, you double the amount. So if you go to 9-bit, it's double 256. If you go to 10-bit, it's double 256, double that again, which is like so many times more than what you've got with the 8-bit. You've actually got enough room to actually not be able to see the colour differences or the banding, because there's so many colours there, but you've also got enough room to actually move it around a bit, so you actually see the definition, or if you want to see, for example, into the shadows, you can actually bring the information in the shadows out and make it viewable on screen.
But if you wanted to edit that and, say, bring it up to 10-bit or 12-bit or something, it has to be at least recorded at that level, doesn't it? Because you can't invent stuff that's not there. You can't invent information that doesn't exist.
And CSI says you can.
Yeah, but it's
but
you and your
you've met FBI people now. Go away.
and that's where when you say raw capture, usually raw captures are doing it at 12-bit or even possibly more. Okay. And that's why you have so much information there. Like you were saying there, Andrew, you can basically type of re-expose the picture. Basically, you're telling the algorithm which pulls that raw data and turns it into a colour space which you're used to in the computer, and it makes a decision on how you're going to pull that out. And in reality, it's sort of re-exposing the picture in the way that comes out in the way that you want it to come out. And that's how, for example, the Red camera works. It records in RAW, a compressed version of RAW, which is 4 times the bandwidth, which is... I know that the C300 is 50 megabit a second. The Red Scarlet can do 200 or 400 megabits a second.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
When you think about today's... How would that compare with the average DV camera in respect to data rates? That'd be 25. Less than Firewire, wouldn't it? It'd be really...
I think it was 25.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 400.
Yeah.
But we are doing HD.
Am I right in saying that the downside recording in that resolution is that it uses an enormous amount of storage space, whether it's to...
How much is a 2 gig hard drive?
Well, it depends before or after the floods.
So I would have thought you'd be talking like, not gigabytes, I thought you would have been talking terabytes, like hundreds of terabytes of data if you're shooting for hours on end.
Well, a typical film would be... it's not really my area, but I understand that a typical film these days would be like, 15 to 25 terabytes in required space for doing the whole post-process, special effects and everything for a film, which is quite a lot, but it's not out of the
not unmanageable, I guess.
Well, your average storage these days in these places are 40, 60, 80. There's plenty of space. It's not really an issue these days.
I was thinking more from the point of view of the camera or the recording device. When you're out on location and you're shooting this sort of stuff, you've got to have a recorder, a portable recorder that will write those sorts of volumes.
Well, so on the C300, it has I think the typical SSD card, I forget from memory, it's a domestic type thing, and on the Red camera they have actually purpose-built high-performance SSD drives built into mags.
Solid-state disk drives, SSD?
That's right. So 250 gig for, I don't know, is it 10 or 20 minutes? So it's still, you're storing a lot, that's a lot of data.
It is 250 gigabytes for 20 minutes of
I think it's off the top of my head, but it's still a lot, and that's why I think the Red, which is a cut down of the Scarlet, I think if I had a choice and I was an independent filmmaker, I'd probably go towards the Red because it does record in 4K RAW, so you can actually make a better decision on how you're going to use that and make a better result if you're going to cut into the image. While the C300, they say they're going to upgrade it because it's actually got a 4K sensor, but currently it'll only output to 2K.
We're using 4K, we're using 2K. Can you explain to the listeners again, what are you talking about when it comes to 4K? Maybe put into perspective to standard def and HD.
Okay, strangely enough, standard def is 1920 by 1080, right?
That we're talking pixels. So if you get your Photoshop and you open it up and it says, how big do you want
That's right. So if you get a good 23-inch screen for your computer these days, usually they are all 1920 by 1080.
Yeah, we've all seen those numbers on the spec sheet, haven't we? Yeah.
So the quality of that screen is pretty much the quality of HD. You can get up real close and see the pixel sizes, etc. Now, 2K is basically 2048 by 858 for widescreen, or 1080 by it's actually 1998 by 1084.
You can round here. We're amongst friends.
They're very close, and to a degree, I heard when I was talking to other people in Hollywood, some friends over there, one of the main reasons they made it, because it's so close to HD, you say, why didn't you use HD? Well, they made it different for the sake of making it different, so it was harder to do pirating and other bits and pieces so they could make the work for it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, look, I believe you, anything at Hollywood, yeah.
But, it's all, as a post person, I think it's a bit silly, but... So then the 4K is basically double 2K, which is...
So it's twice as big.
Twice as big across and down.
For the same resolution? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 4 times the resolution of 2K because it's twice this way and that way. So it's a lot more data. When you're, most films still go to a 2K release, but people are starting to push into 4K because all the DCI equipment now that's out there, which I spoke about last time, is pretty much 4K capable. If the projector's not capable yet, it just downsizes it in real time to 2K anyway. Or if you do have all the full workflow from the player to the projector as 4K, you will see 4K on screen now. There is equipment you can see out there. There's not many in Australia yet, but there's a few coming now.
So your average cinema is still 2K in these new digital screens?
That's right. And most of them will be. And a few of them will be upgrading the larger screens because it's the larger screens which really take advantage of the 4K because you can't really see the 4K on screen if you're sitting at the premium, the correct distance from the screen at the correct, etc. You won't actually see that. You can't really see because your eyes can't really pick up that detail at that distance. But if you've got someone sitting in the third row at the front, then it will make a difference to them, especially on larger screens.
So obviously 2K is what we see in the screens. Now, most of these cameras we've spoken about tonight, the
C300?
Yeah, the new C300 from Canon. Obviously, the F3 from Sony can do it, and the Scarlett can do that. So you've got a tool... a sub $20,000 camera, which is really, hiring that's relatively cheap compared to the Arris and the Panavisions and stuff like that. So hopefully we're going to see the independent filmmakers be able to utilise that. And of course, these great things, as I point to a 7D in the corner over here, they're absolutely fantastic for those guys, and you can get rolling on those for next to nothing, really.
That's right, yes. And I know a number of, if we're going to talk about productions... the 550s and the 550Ds and the 60Ds, which are like...
Now, they're earlier model...
Well, no, they're a little earlier, but they're still current model.
Yeah, Canon cameras,
and we're talking about bodies which are worth $600-700.
Dr. Ron's got one of those, haven't you? Dr. Ron, you got a 660, haven't you?
I've got a C400D.
A 400, is it? Yeah.
Anyway, those cameras pretty much are very similar to the quality of the 7D, probably not slightly as light sensitive, but they're actually been adopted by a lot of feature films. In the old days, you'd get these special, very small 35mm cameras. They'd stick them in the corner of cars to do those really difficult shots, or they're going to put them in on a car which they're going to crash, right? So the camera most likely is a write-off. Well, that's all changed to 550Ds and 60Ds. They just, we'll just get a 20 of them and we'll just blow them up as we need them. They're that cheap.
Yeah.
And that's sort of some of the other changes, and that's happening in the top tier of the market as well.
It'd be nice to have a budget like that, wouldn't it?
That's right. Now, let's move on to the advantage of digital, and I'm a big fan of faster frame rates.
Oh, for the slow-mos. We all love slow-mos, don't we? There's a beer ad going around doing those, aren't they?
Well, I want faster frame rates typically in the cinema. I think, as a person who's seen a bit of this, etc., that 3D is great, etc., but 3D is going from...
Is it? Sorry, moving on.
Yeah, some people don't like it, and for good reasons. But 3D brings back the quality of what's on screen a lot from what we're used to in terms of 14-foot Lamberts on screen, very bright, very clear. And 3D, the standard is only 3.5-foot Lamberts on screen.
Now that's brightness, isn't it?
That's right. And
the brightness of the screen.
That's right. So when you can do a 3D and you're looking at through your glasses, it's exceedingly less bright than a typical film would be. And it makes it very difficult in lots of different reasons. One of the main reasons is that brightness, in your eye there's cones, there's rods and cones.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I remember that from science, yes.
That's right. Well,
cornea and whatnot.
That's right. Well,
cataracts? Sorry.
Hopefully not.
At different light levels, you have the rods or cones coming into action because they pick up light at different, more effectively than the other, right? And at that low light level of 3.5-foot Lamberts, you're actually in the transitional spot where the rods could be working or the cones could be working. And that's why they need to actually regrade the film specifically if you're 3.5-foot Lamberts. In IMAX, they go up to 6-foot Lamberts. And James Cameron wants to go to 10-foot Lamberts because he thinks that looks the best.
James Cameron, the director of... the one
Titanic.
With the blue guys.
Yeah, the blue. Yeah, the Smurfs. No.
The bad news. And this is the really indictable state of cinema in this planet.
What have you done?
I didn't do anything. He's looking at me like I did something wrong.
Titanic is getting a re-release.
Woohoo!
In 3D.
Oh,
in
no.
3D. Are you,
in 3D?
Yeah. Why do you think he's re-releasing?
That's it. I'm never going to the cinema again, except to see Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which has been delayed in this country, but then again, that's another story.
We all know what happens. The ship hits an iceberg.
Yeah, and it sinks.
Spoilers? Jeez.
Oh God, go and...
Anyway, so we want more light for 3D, and I agree with that. I've seen some test screenings of it, and it does look much better, and I'm actually more liking it in terms of... I'm with you, Andrew. I'm not a big fan of 3D, but in some areas it does work. Yeah. But I'm a bigger fan of faster frame rates. If you see a fight scene at 60 frames... compared to just a typical, 24 frames a second, it's like because I'm rather old. I was there when THX was installed, and Dolby Digital came to the cinemas, and I went there. Is this cinema in Dolby Digital? Yes, and sat in, and you listened there, and you really felt the difference. The sound was
they've taken that off
better.
the DVDs now, haven't they? We don't get the whooshy thing that Dolby Digital's in the front.
Yeah, you get them on some of them, or they've changed them.
Well, not on the Blu-rays anyway.
Anyway, so. That I think faster frame rates is that sort of jump to me. It's the same but better. 3D is like 3D. It's not as bright, and I don't think it's got some negatives as well as some advantages.
Yeah.
But faster frame rates is the same but better. Now, there's a lot of people who are against faster frame rates because it looks like video, because you are actually taking pictures at like 24 frames a second, 1/24th of a second per frame, for example, or close to that. If you're going to 60 frames a second, you have to start at 60 frames a second or faster to take the images when you're recording 60 frames a second. So it looks more stroby like a video camera looks. So the people in the industry don't like the look.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's one thing I noticed on television a few years back. They started doing that sort of thing with sport. Like at the Olympics and stuff, and you actually saw like downhill skiing or something, and you didn't have that blur in the motion anymore. It was all very, very stroby, and I didn't really like it, to be honest. It took a lot of getting used to.
If you see it, it looks good. I saw some fight scenes at 60 frames that James did in the test, and it looked fantastic, especially in 3D, because it did more look like looking for a window, especially at 10-foot Lamberts. And The Hobbit is 48 frames a second. It's coming out soon.
I'm looking forward to that.
Everyone's looking forward to see exactly...
New Zealand. They do it well.
Yes.
Vita.
I think it'll change the industry, because once the public sees faster frame rates, it'll become very important. The only thing that's stopping it really is that the distributors are having enough problems getting to digital, and they're not really that interested in it yet. So it's going to probably take a while to get there.
James, what's your website if people want to find out more about current cinema technology?
Well, I do a website called CineTechGeek.
It's your blog, isn't it, that you do all your best work on, isn't it? Is that the CineTechGeek one?
CineTechGeek's where I do my video blogs, which is mostly about that. I have another blog, which is just me rambling on about things. I like to get on my soapbox and rant, and that's crafter.com.au. But CineTechGeek.com is where I put videos on there, and I hope to be putting up some over Christmas after I get through. I'm just very busy at the moment.
Aren't we all?
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much for coming in this evening.
That's all right.
It's been wonderful. On our third last show for the year, we'll get you back in next year, and we can talk more about these wonderful topics, especially as we get to be bored to tears with Titanic 2, or the re-release in
3D, what's more?
Well, Ron's ruined the ending now, so I'm not interested.
Okay. Well, spoilers. Odd Sport Gadget website the week after this.